Here's Bob and Suzanne.
Chicken joke!
I'm Mrs. Cleaver.
From Television City in Hollywood.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller plays.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology. Nanu.
Baby, you're the great.
Here comes the judge.
More cowbell.
Not special.
There's anything wrong with that.
And now for something completely different.
There's no business like show business.
Welcome to Where Hollywood Hides. My name is Bob McCullough.
And my name is Suzanne Herrera McCullough.
Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Bob.
Today, we have an incredible guest, a longtime friend of ours, an actor I've worked with a couple of times, David Selby. David was originally from West Virginia and became a serious New York actor and then became a major star with Dark Shadows in the early 70s, became something of a pop icon, and shortly thereafter became a major television celebrity working on shows like Flamingo Road and Falcon Crest. He's done a number of feature films. He's co-starred with Barbra Streisand. He was in Super Cops, Raise the Titanic, Rich and Famous, White Squall, The Mighty Ducks, and recently...
He has quite a resume.
Unbelievable.
I was going over it.
He had some great work done. He did some great stuff in Social Network, and he recently has a new movie coming out, directed by Ridley Scott, called Equals. In our conversation with David, you'll learn what it really takes to be a serious actor with a long-term career. It's a great conversation. A wonderful guy, great sense of humor.
A true gentleman.
And a serious family man who understands that careers are not made overnight. So before we hear from David, let's remind everybody about our book, Where Hollywood Hides,
Santa Barbara.
Currently available at Chaucer's in Santa Barbara. They're doing a phenomenal job with the book. It's also online at wherehollywoodhides.com. Order it now. You get free shipping. I do want to remind everybody, when they go to the website, look at those links. They're all connected to Amazon. Anything you want to buy at Amazon, you can find through our website at wherehollywoodhides.com. We feature a number of things relating directly to the guests that we interview, and all of their shows, their DVDs, their books. It's all available at wherehollywoodhides.com. And now, here's David Selby.
Hi, David.
Hi, Suzanne.
First of all, we want to thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. We've had a number of people interviewed in the past, and everybody has a wonderful, unique story to tell. And you probably have one of the more unique stories that I know of, having come from your origins. And what we like to do is kind of start at the very beginning and tell us really what your childhood was like, and tell us the story of how you became David Selby. That's a big question, I know.
That's a big question. Well, I was, like my wife, I was born and raised in West Virginia. A little town called Morgantown, which is the home of West Virginia University, and the whole town, that northern end of West Virginia, which butts up against Pennsylvania on the north side, has just grown over the years. So what started out as a very small, university is now 30,000, 35,000 or whatever in the town is, grown with the university. So it's a much different place than where I grew up. We still keep, in touch. We still have friends back there that we grew up with. Especially my wife, Chip. She has a number of friends back there that we see every year.
Chip is from that area as well.
She's from Beckley, West Virginia, which is in the southern part of the state. And I grew up in Morgantown, and eventually, was a bit of a dreamer. My head was always someplace else, and I was trying, and then I came upon, when I was a senior in high school, I read a couple of plays, and then I decided, having no money or anything, but what the treasure that I had was West Virginia University, and it was right there, so I could walk to the university. So I enrolled and was not a great student.
What kind of major did you have in mind?
Well, I didn't, Bob. I enrolled in, I thought, well, maybe I'll enroll in business. But I didn't do well my first year, so I was in summer school after my very first year in college, just to make, to bring my grades up a little bit. And I was in a line, my name, this fellow was, he was counselor for S. If your name began with an S and you went through a line, you saw a placard above, and S was here. So I stopped there to sign up for the summer classes. And he happened to be, I didn't know, he said to me, why don't you take a theater course? And for something inside me, I don't know. I said, well, he said, you can take an acting class.
Had you ever thought about acting up until that point?
Not like, no. I'd been in a play when I was a freshman in high school, and everyone and it was a kind of situation where everyone laughed out in the audience. I had to kiss this girl. Her name was Susan Clark. I always remember that. And she was a friend. And it brought the assembly down to a halt. And
you must have taken quite the razzing for that one.
Right, that was, oh my goodness, yeah, you had to hide the fact. So that was the end of my thespian career there. But it turned out that this gentleman who was, and we just got a Christmas card from him. His name is Charles Neal. He was an acting teacher at the university in the theater department. They didn't really have a theater department. They had a speech department. Long and short, I did. I enrolled in that class. He taught it. And during the class, I was right away thinking, oh, my God, the first play I ever read, which I later was Arthur Miller's The Crucible. Mm-hmm. And I did a scene from it. And so then later in the semester, I said, well, how do you become an actor? And this was an honest question to him, and I was by then a sophomore. And he said, well, you go to New York for 10 years. I talked to a fellow whose dad worked for the railroad to see if he could stop the train that went to New York. And he did. His job was to put mail out on a and the train wouldn't stop. It would just hook the mail back.
Right. They used to have a mail hook. Right.
Right. But he Morse coded down. He tapped his code down to the train to stop. He gave us 2 passes to New York and 2 return passes. And I had $25 I had taken with me. And we went to New York.
Now that's a connection for you. That took connections.
That's funny.
That's a good connection. But, right. He later, his name was Gene Gross. He later became an engineer and went to graduate school at Purdue. But I lasted 3 days in New York because the first, I got off the train. We got off the train and I passed this agency or whatever one and said, tickets to Sound of Music. And they were $19. So before we had a place to stay, I'd already spent $19 on a ticket to see Mary Martin in The Sound of Music.
Boy. And
then we got a room for $2. And 2 days later, after getting lost in Central Park, we used our passes and came back to West Virginia. And the next time I went to New York, I was married.
So what were you doing about the draft in Vietnam and things like that?
Okay, this is right after I did the audition in Chicago. I get a job at the Barter Theater, which is in Abington, Virginia, which was not just 2 hours from my wife's home, only it's in Virginia. And I'll tell you, we just stopped at that theater this past summer, just to, for old time's sake. Uh-huh. But I went to the Barter Theater. While I'm there, I get my draft call.
Oh, boy.
I get a notice to take a physical.
I remember that very well.
The draft person lived right across the street from me when I was a kid. Her name was Nellie Gall. And she said, David, you probably have too much whatever education by now. And so, but I went, I borrowed a pickup truck from the theater, and I drove to Roanoke, Virginia to take a physical. And while I was there, the man, that's exactly what he said. He said, no, you've got too much schooling. Don't worry, you're not going anywhere. We don't want you.
Oh, really?
I passed my physical, yes. I passed my physical and was scheduled, whatever they called 1A then.
Right.
And I went back to Abington, finished there, went to Cleveland, to the Cleveland Playhouse, because the director I met at the Barter Theater recommended me to go to Cleveland. And I did. And I was never drafted, Bob. And I finally got a notice that said, no, that if, so that was it.
Wow.
Because by then I had a master's degree and I had all my hours for my doctorate. So and I was married.
Oh, there you go. You had the marriage deferment. Yeah.
And another thing, which was probably more related to that, is that West Virginia always fulfilled their draft quota because so many people enlisted in
Right.
West Virginia.
Not California.
Yeah, it was a little different out here on the West Coast. I mean, I literally had to hide for 3 years.
Right. Well, it's funny because while we were in Southern Illinois, a friend of mine, Bob Meyer, he was in a play with me there called Bus Stop. Bob had directed it, and he got his draft notice right there. I know this sounds crazy, but this was the tenor of the times. He staged an epileptic fit. A fellow in our cast who played Virgil had epilepsy, and he gave some lessons to Bob on how to stage this fit.
Sure.
Bob staged the fit. Now, in the meantime, I know that this is just how crazy those 60s were.
Right.
His friend that he was living with, girlfriend, she was playing the role called Cherry in Bus Stop. Sherry. It's Cherry, yeah. And she was so upset, she joined the Peace Corps.
Oh, my God.
They took her in the Peace Corps, and Bob got out of the draft.
Oh,
Not because of epilepsy, but because of him.
He couldn't get it.
He was a mental case.
Perfect.
And they refused to take him, but she got sent to Columbia for the Peace Corps. And so that was the end of that.
Well, he must have been a good actor to pull that one off.
Yeah.
But that's exactly
anyway,
what was going on. People were doing whatever it took, for sure.
Yeah. And then, so anyway, the long story, after that, we went to the Cleveland Playhouse. Chippy taught at Cleveland State University, had a job there. We stayed there for 9 months, and then we moved to New York City.
So what I'm hearing is you've never really had a straight job.
I've never had a straight job.
You've never stood behind a counter and rung a cash register. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
Never. No, I just luck of the draw or whatever. It just, no, I've never done that. But when we went to New York, I told her I was going to take a job teaching at Brooklyn College, and Chip wouldn't let me. She said, no, that's not why we're here. So she got a job as an editor. And then it wasn't long after that I got a paying gig. I was doing plays off-Broadway and off-Broadway and building theaters and doing that kind of thing, building our own theater and making plays. But I got a television series called Dark Shadows. And that
changed everything.
That changed a lot of things.
David, it was very lucky and probably great that you two had each other in New York.
Oh, yes, and you can be very lonely in it.
Yes.
There's no doubt in my mind. I just wouldn't have done it without her.
So tell us the story. How did the Dark Shadows thing actually come to pass? You're doing off-Broadway.
I was doing
obviously
off-Broadway, and I was over at Actors Studio, which was on 46th, I think at that time, 45th, I can't remember. I was at the studio, and a fella came up to me and said, do you have an agent? And I said, well, I'm working with one. So, but he gave me the name of an agent, which was at an agency called Ashley Famous.
Sure.
And so I went over. I made an appointment. They were expecting my call, so I went over there, met a couple of agents, and they asked me if I would do a scene for them. And so I said yes, I would do it. So I was working with a gal, she's a scene partner called Kathy Mann. She later married. She was on Entertainment Tonight as a reporter, and then she married a congressman or something. The guy was on Love Boat who became a congressman or something. I can't remember. Fred?
I think it was Fred Gandy or Fred Grandy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recall.
Anyway, I'm doing this. We do a scene from Summer and Smoke, from Tennessee's Williams' Summer and Smoke. And I finished the scene, and they said, terrific. And an agent there, his name is John Secura. I saw him not too long ago in Washington, D.C. John said, there's this television show, that they're looking for, they're casting a new role in it. And I had never seen it, didn't know anything about it. So I went down to meet this lady. Her name was Marion Dougherty. And Marion later became a VP of Warner Brothers.
Right.
She was a huge factor in my early times. And she had a knack for pulling actors out of New York and putting them in plays or films and television and sort. So I went to meet Marion. She said, where have you been? And I told her, and she made a comment. She said she said she wished that I had been there sometime earlier. She was casting Midnight Cowboy.
Oh, for the John Voight role.
John Voight. And ironically, I had seen John Voight as a kid when I went to New York and saw Sound of Music, because he was in Sound of Music. That was before he became a right-winger, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, Marion put me in a cab, went with me, paid for the cab fare, took me up to a fellow's office on Park Avenue named Dan Curtis. I walked in. He said, do a scene. I did. I arranged for Kathy Mann to meet me there. We did the same scene. I had to pick up, funny you mentioned golf ball, because Dan Curtis started the first CBS Golf Classic. He wanted to televise golf, and that's because he was a great golfer. No one would, they all said, you can't televise golf. And the PGA Tour, a lot of the pro players didn't want to do it. So he finally convinced a few of the players to do it, and he'd camp out at Augusta when they were playing. And he put a television show on called the CBS, I believe it was called the CBS Golf Classic. Sure. Anyway, he had a dream one night. He wanted to do other things. He had a dream about this show, Dark Shadows. So he sold it to ABC. And the show was running, but was in a little trouble. I went in. I auditioned. The next day they looked at me on camera, and 10 minutes later, I had the job.
Well, how exciting!
So the character didn't speak for the first 3 months. He was on the show, and I was on the show, and I thought it would be like the talkies, when they hear you, they'll give you your notice. Anyway.
So suddenly you had a steady paycheck.
I had a steady paycheck.
That changes a lot when you're living in New York.
Yeah, that changed a lot. We had our apartment on at that time it was West 74th Street.
How did you feel about, because you had done a lot of real stage work, I mean, Tennessee Williams, Arthur Miller, some serious heavy stuff, and now you're doing, well, for the first 3 months, right, a silent bit, if you will. And becoming a teen idol. How did you balance that training with kind of the pop phenom that you became?
Bob, I didn't. And one of the things is that maybe because of the theater thing, I always loved theater, and it's always my first. I never thought about it. I always approached the role the same way. So I didn't really think of it in those terms, and I must say the whole cast is if I go back and look at those things, and Now they're everywhere. In fact, CBS is just getting ready to do a whole marathon of the original show on another network that they own. It's just huge. I can't even go where the...
It sounds like it's come full circle.
Oh, it's come full circle. They just told me. In fact, this morning I was on the thing, and they said, David, they run this site. I run this. I don't. I've never even seen it, but this gal runs it for me, and she's great. She was a professor, and she runs it. And she comes on. She says, David, the site it's now got over 35,000 hits since yesterday.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, in terms of pop culture, more people know your character than ever have read any of Dickens in history. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's just. Yes, and so you got to approach it from that very thing. You got to step back and say, "Wait a minute here." But yes, it's and I'm not that I've just been very blessed, and I'm grateful for that show. We approached it it was very serious. You know, we did some interesting things on that show because we had one of the first woman directors ever for a television director, Leela Swift. There were a couple of directors in New York that were women, and I worked for both of them. Then, you know, the blue screen and all of that sort of thing. It was a show. All of our costumes were handmade at the set, at the studio. You know, we had that. The props were antiques and all of these kinds of things. And
now, was the show was it a 5-day a week gig for you?
It's 5 day a week, yeah.
And tell us what the process was. I mean, today's audience, and certainly our listeners, may not be familiar with the classic soap opera format and the demands it made upon actors. I mean, you didn't have a lot of time to study your scripts.
No. Well, we would be there. We would start. I'd walk down to the studio. I lived on 74th. The studio was on 53rd between 9th and 10th. So I'd walk to work. And what happened I would walk to work, be there at 8 o'clock. We would go in. They'd have donuts and that sort of thing. We would block the scene. We'd already read the script the night before, you know, and learned the lines. We'd block the scene, and then around 10 o'clock, we would go down. We'd block the show. Then 10 o'clock, we would go down and go on camera, block it on camera. And then they'd break for lunch. We would have another rehearsal through up in our production room. And then it was live, Bob and Suzanne. When the time came for us, we were live on tape. We could not stop because if we stopped, we lost the cameras to the news department for the West Coast feed. So we had to finish.
That's a lot of pressure.
That was a lot of pressure. And plus, you know, all the lines, and it was a 3-camera. You know, we had 3 cameras, so you'd run. And it was just, the studio was tiny. I mean, and what was put on down there. So we would do that. If we got through the show, which we always did, and that all the mistakes were there. Everything. If it broke down, you had to look at the teleprompter. I mean, it was just the only time we ever stopped is when a camera went dead. So out of that came this kind of live, you know, people would watch and they couldn't, you know, everyone was, their adrenaline, all the actors, their adrenaline was high, you know, to get through this thing. So we would finish this taping. Only a couple of times did we have to hold off on the cameras and come back at 7 o'clock at night when they had finished the West Coast news. I think that's what made soap operas so kind of compelling to watch. The audience perception, the suspension of disbelief, you kind of realized it was live. It was happening before you. And a show like Dark Shadows, where the mood was as important as the characters, Oh, yeah.
The lighting was fairly flexible.
The lighting, the sound effects, the smoke.
Right.
We had, that they would create the cobwebs they were creating. While it was crazy. Then we'd come back upstairs, out of our costumes, out of our makeup, go back into the production room, read the next day's script. Now, by then it's 6 o'clock. So 6:30, whatever. And after 4 months on the show, I could no longer walk outside the studio because of the kids.
Because people knew who you were.
Yeah. And they started gathering at the studio. I would go out and greet everyone, and I used to walk home. I felt like, what's that? With all the kids around me, following me home. And then we started to get the idea. And then this lady visited me. Her name was Gloria Stavers, and she was 16 Magazine. And she said, I want to come to your home. And she came, or my apartment, and she brought the things she wanted me to wear. It was like an Earl Flynn.
Oh, boy.
Wow. So I have to ask you as a wife, how did Chip handle all this at the beginning?
Well, she was fine, at the beginning because she was really included. I mean, when Gloria came, she took pictures of both of us. It was that whole thing, and it was. I don't know. We just we felt, hey, we're living. We're making a living here. It wasn't a lot of money,
right? But still, you're two kids from West Virginia in the Big Apple.
That's right.
And you're becoming media hot. Yeah.
Yeah, and, I was having to make appearances, around, and some places I couldn't even stay. Wow. There were 100,000 showed up in Baltimore. They airlifted me. I was in Pennsylvania one day ABC wanted me to go to this shopping center, and I did. And I couldn't appear, so they were afraid that I would get hurt. Everyone would get hurt. So
David, I've worked with a lot of guys who have had that kind of early success and the rush of fame, and they have become complete calamities in their adulthood. To what do you attribute the fact that even today, and you can still go anywhere and be known for Dark Shadows and Falcon Crest, to what do you attribute your equanimity? I'll put it that way.
My wife.
Oh, boy. Okay.
My wife. It's very simple, Chip, and the family. And that kept me pretty grounded. Also, I think where we came from, maybe how I was brought up. I'm not saying that there were times when you'd think, oh boy, gee, but basically, I just think I was, fairly grounded in that way, and so I don't know. I mean,
so how long were you on Dark Shadows?
Just over 2 years.
Boy,
but it was straight through.
Yeah,
I mean, I did 49 shows in a row once. So then I'd go home. After I finished there, I'd get home at 7. We'd, have a little bite to eat, and then I'd learn the lines, and I'd try and be in bed, by 10 o'clock, 10:30. But then what happened was I started doing plays while I was doing the show. So I would film the show, rehearse, and then go to the theater. That's where it was tough on Chip, because then I was not only doing Dark Shadows, in the studio, I was also then going to a theater and doing a play at night. So that was difficult, those times. And I did a few plays during that time.
Well, you have to be in shape for that kind of schedule.
Yeah.
For sure.
So how soon after that did you start having a family?
I had my son was born during Dark Shadows.
Boy.
So you and Chip had your plate full.
And we had a playful, yeah.
It sounds like
Yeah,
Chip was
and we
taking...
named him after one of the characters in a way. I mean, there were two reasons. One, he was named Jameson, and my son, a young man on Dark Shadows, his character was named Jameson.
Well, that's a nice tribute. So Dark Shadows made you a kind of a pop culture icon. Is that what led you to Hollywood ultimately?
You know, we did a Dark Shadows movie, which ironically is coming full circle because what happened, MGM wanted to do movies, and I didn't do the first one. I did do the second one we were still shooting the television show. So I did the movie. We filmed it, and then they wanted to, MGM cut the heck out of it, and the screenwriter was crying. I'm literally crying, you know, because he had been a writer. He was a writer on the show. Great guy. And he was married to Grayson Hall, who was in, Night of the Iguana. Yeah, with Richard Burton and Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, those people, those actors.
Yeah, those actors. But on Dark Shadows, you see, we had a great star, Joan Bennett.
Right.
And Joan Bennett was our, was a rock on that show. So
you did the feature.
I did the feature, and the feature came out, didn't do anything because they cut 30 minutes out of it. They wanted to fit it on a double bill. And so the film just didn't do anything. But right away, I'd been in a play in New York that got a lot of acclaim. It was called Sticks and Bones. In fact, they just did a revival of it. And it got a lot of notice, and the director came to see me. And he wanted to meet me because he didn't feel I was right for the film they were going to do because of the character in the play is, quite whatever, a Vietnam, young Vietnam vet. And he just felt the performance, but he wanted to meet me because he was touched by the performance and where all this anger and stuff could come from or whatever. But I did, and then he sat there and took about 10 Polaroid shots of me at this meeting.
I remember Polaroid shots.
Yeah, he looked at one. His name was Irv Kirshner, and he directed also the second Star Wars film, but he had been a mentor to George Lucas.
Uh-huh.
And he looked at that Polaroid, and he said, "That's Paul." That was the name of the character. So the long and short is I dropped out of Sticks and Bones to do a film with Barbra Streisand, and it was called Up the Sandbox.
Right.
So I have to ask you, a lot of viewers are going to want to know, what was it like to work with Barbra? Because she has a reputation of being a bit of a diva. And I know she was young, and she's so talented.
Yeah, no, she, maybe is, I don't know, I never saw that. Maybe it's because both of us were just, at that time. She said some lovely things like, can you believe a good film ever gets made? Because of all the hurly-burly around the film and thing. And I would go in, and a guy named Gordon Willis, he directed, he shot The Godfathers. Gordon was our cinematographer.
Right.
And we would go in, and Barbra, we'd go in and watch dailies, and I went with her once or twice, and I made a comment once, and Gordon says, sitting right behind us, and he says, "Oh, no, not you, too." He says, "Listen, you two, I'm not out to ruin your careers." And one day Barbra came in, she says, "Don't say anything, but we're going to shoot that one scene over again." But and we did, and that time the lighting was just everywhere. And but she was terrific. We'd watch movies at her home. It's where I met the people that wrote the songs, The Way We Were. I just had a great time.
So you returned to New York and your acting roots, but you continued to be drawn back to Hollywood in feature films, and you did it. You've done like 25 movies. One of which was one of my favorites from the 70s, The Super Cops with Ron Liebman.
Yeah, that's Super Cops. Actually, it's one of a few years ago. I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. Quentin Tarantino, a friend of Quentin's, and Quentin has a theater. I guess he still has it down on Beverly, a movie theater. And this guy, friend of his and director, loved Super Cops. The only print they could find was in England.
Oh, really?
So they brought it over, and Quentin had a screening in his theater.
Oh, how fun!
Super Cops. And Lorenzo Semple came. He wrote it, and then Quentin told me. So we're sitting beside each other watching the screening, and I just felt the film, or me in particular, I could have been a little better, whatever. But I didn't say anything. But Quentin says to the audience, he said, when I was a kid, I had this name, and I didn't like my name. I was always a little self-conscious of my name until this character came along on a show called Dark Shadows, and his name was Quentin. And all of a sudden, he said, my name was terrific.
Wow. That's a nice thing to say, huh?
That was wonderful.
Yeah. And Super Cops was really quite a divergent role for you, because it was really 80% action.
Yes, 80% action, and we did it all. We did all our stunts. I remember once Ron went through a window. I went through first, but what happened was I crashed through the window. The sash, or the sill, came down. The top sill came down. When Ron hit it, it cut him. So we lost a half a day shooting there. Well, they bandaged him up. Gordon Parks was our director, the great Life magazine photographer, and Gordon was quite terrific.
Now at that point, you had done basically live television. You've done a lot of live theater, and now you're doing feature films. For our listeners, as an actor, tell us the differences for you. I mean, what technique changes for you?
Well, it was a learning curve for me. But as far as approaching the role, I've never approached the role any differently. I always, I read the script and I walk around with it. Preferably, I like to walk around with it. And, sometimes you're given the line, you'll be given a new line as soon as you walk in to film that day. But there are things that, and they always say the eyes are the thing to the soul, or whatever. And so you do learn to economize and in that very kind of thing, because the camera can see things you don't see. And I always found that for me, I kind of, although I wasn't, it took a while, the kind of stillness, or the kind of, using the eyes as a mirror of what's going on, that, I suppose, the economy of emotion, but yet at the same time, not being afraid to let it go,
Right.
So speaking of directors, before we talk about Falcon Crest, where we met you,
yeah.
Do you have any favorite directors that you've worked with?
I worked with David Fincher on the film called Social Network. And David, leaves pretty much, at least from my experience, left you alone. But he makes comments. He does a lot of takes, And when you're doing a lot of takes, you can, experiment a little, play around a little. And a lot of times when they do another take, they're not looking for the same performance. They want you to do something different.
Speaking of Social Network, the scenes that you were in were, even though everybody was fairly static, they were among the most dynamic scenes in the picture, I thought, just because the air of tension was so great. How long did that work take you? How long were you on that set?
A couple of weeks.
For those scenes. That's impressive. I can imagine how many variations of that took place, and because there was so much dialogue in that scene.
Right. I remember once Jesse saying, I like that take. And the script supervisor said, "Which take was that you liked?" And he said, I can't remember, but it was like take 18 or 19. And David said, "That's the one I like."
Wow. Tell us that now the transition. So you're doing some features. You're, on a trajectory to become a major motion picture star.
Well, I want to ask this question before.
Sure.
In what year did you and Chip end up coming to California permanently?
Well, that's part of the story of what ties in with the question that Bob was, I think, getting ready to ask. I just stayed away. Dark Shadows was such a, experience and positive that I stayed away from television. And then finally, I think it was ABC, they asked me to do another television, but it was a limited series called Watching Behind Closed Doors. And a friend of mine, Jason Robards, Jason was going to be in it. It had a great cast of people that were going to do this series. And so I said, okay, I did it. And then, but I went, of course, went right back to New York after that. And I was looking to do certain things. I wanted to do more theater, so we did. I did a couple of plays with. I did a play called The Heiress with Jane Alexander in New York and Richard Kiley. We started it at the Kennedy Center and moved it to New York. We had a great cast, and Jane, we did Hedda Gabler together, and that's during the production of Hedda Gabler. I was playing Eile Glupborg, and he's a poet. What happened in that trek leading up to Falcon Crest, I had been offered a couple of things. When I was, after Dark Shadows, I had met somebody because of Dark Shadows right in the parking lot there, and they said that I don't know, they wanted me to do, they said, you should, when you go to California, we want you to do an episode of the Waltons. They had been instrumental, I guess, I know it's a tie-in to some kind of parking lot business or whatever to Lorimar at that time.
Uh-huh.
And I went to California and did an episode of the Waltons, and went back to New York after that. And then much later, I would get visits. I was asked to do, if I would come on to, they were going to do a show called Dallas, but they'd already cast Larry Hagman, and they said, would you do another role on it and then spin it off for another show? And I said, I was doing a play, actually, and I said no. And so I was doing the Children's Hour, I think, with Joanne Woodward and a wonderful actress named Shirley Knight.
So sometimes when you say no, they want you even more.
Yeah, so I'm in Boston, and Jay and I are doing Hedda Gabler. And I get a knock on the door, after the show, and this lady from, I think she was from NBC, yeah. It was NBC, not CBS, NBC, and she said something to the effect that she had been sent up to retrieve me. And they had another television show. Again, it was a Lorimar show. And so Jane encouraged me to do it. And because I just I wanted to get everyone together. I was traveling so much, and this would allow me to come to California. So I went to California to do that show. It was a show for Lorimar, but they had already been on a year, and they were in a little trouble.
That was Flamingo Road, right?
That was Flamingo Road. So we did that, but again, I was out in California by myself. So as soon as that was over, my son came and stayed with me for a while, but I went back to New York, and a couple of weeks later, I got a call and about Falcon Crest. And we're sitting around the table, and Chip said, we're moving. That's it, we're moving. that was we thought, let's make this jump right now.
So what was the compelling factor? Was it the financial offer, the creative offer?
Yeah, the financial offer was good. We just felt, I looked at the show and I said, we got a shot here. We can stay in one place. I won't have to go do a film here and there, a play, and I don't know what it was, Bob, but they said we'll bring the costumer, and they were going to bring our cinematographer over from Flamingo Road and everything. And they said, and you can start out in Napa.
That's when that's where we first met.
That's where we first met. That's
I remember
right. Frank Raymond. Do you remember Frank?
Very well. Very well.
Frank Raymond, CEO. So I felt sort of comfortable in that situation or whatever, and so we decided to move right there. And Lorimar moved us, lock, stock, and barrel.
That's a big move for a family.
Yeah. So they moved. They paid. It was. We thought, God, how are we going to do this? But Lorimar paid for it. And we moved to California, and I went first, and Chippy came with, we always laugh. They rented us, so we had a house and a rental, and she got off the plane and I wasn't going to even meet her. She had three animals, 3 children.
Perfect.
And a lot of bikes.
Wow.
Perfect. So I remember that you and I met in a hotel room at the Holiday Inn in Napa. And you were wearing, in those days, short running shorts, like dolphin running shorts. At the time, everybody was jogging.
Yes. Yeah.
And we had a long conversation about many things, including what Richard Channing was about. And I was really touched by how much you cared about where Richard had come from and where he was going to be going.
Yeah,
I mean, you kind of took the job, a pig in a poke. There's a lot of trust involved on your part.
Well, but I had done. You're right about that, but I had done a lot of. I looked at various guys like Randolph Hearst. I looked at Ted Turner, even in those early days, looking at Ted Turner and Rupert Murdoch And one of the things I looked at Turner, it's interesting as people, I looked at his life, and I believe his father, I may have this wrong, but I don't think so. His father committed suicide.
Right.
And I looked at that life that Ted Turner had and how he pushed through. And I looked at Hearst and all those, and so I sort of had, a little bit of clue. But then the people on the show, my goodness, that came on to the show during my first. Do you remember E.G. Marshall?
Of course, no. We had guest stars that were unparalleled.
Yes, unparalleled. Theodore Bickel.
Yep.
I saw Theodore when I was a kid in Sound of Music, and so we.
we had Cliff Robertson.
Oh, you had wonderful actors.
Yeah. So you had a very special relationship with Jane Wyman. Tell us about that.
Yes. Well, when Jane and it started that summer in Napa.
Because not everybody could crack her veneer, I mean.
Well, I don't know. We were staying in Napa and living at the Holiday Inn, and I don't know whether we just happened to be staying beside each other in the same room, but some people stayed over at another hotel at the country club, I think.
The Silverado, right.
Yeah, but Jane said she liked it there, and I said, I remember talking to her, and I said, well, if it's fine with you, it's good enough for me. So then we started living beside each other, in the same wing of the hotel. And you remember Father Bob?
Absolutely.
Oh, sure.
Father Bob would come and he'd say, I remember getting in and one night, and Father Bob says, we're going to say a mass over, just me, and said, come on over. So I went over. I'd go over, and just Jane and me and Father Bob. And we would have a glass of wine.
Right.
And we just, well, we hit it off.
That's great. Suzanne has a story about Jane. Do you want to repeat your story? We told it before.
Most Sundays when we were there, I'm Catholic. I would go to church with Jane. And I remember specifically regarding you, she had mentioned that she really liked you because you were a real gentleman. And I have to agree with that. She really enjoyed your company. But my funny story about her was, at the time, Ronald Reagan was president.
Yes.
And she, was married to him at one time.
Yes, she was.
And we were all talking about it and just dying to hear what Ronald Reagan was really like. And I finally, after a few glasses of wine, got the courage to ask her, Jane, because she was lovely, but she was very proper. And I said, Jane, what was it like being married to the President of the United States? And she goes, Ronnie was a great swimmer and he could never balance a checkbook. And that was all she ever told me. And that was true Jane Wyman.
Yeah. The only thing she said to me, she said, people think Ronnie and I don't get along. She says, but we do. And she said, and I'm a lousy cook.
Well, the tabloids really had a field day with Jane Wyman and the president when he was president. So I'm sure there was a lot of mistruths spoken, and I'm sure it bothered her that they weren't friends and stuff like that.
So once you came onto the cast of Falcon Crest, you stayed until the bitter end, didn't you?
Oh yes, she did. She did indeed. And I remember a couple of things. She had to go into the hospital for surgery down in Santa Monica at the what's it called? The hospital down there on Wilshire down there.
Was it St. John's?
Yeah. And for diverticulitis, she was having some surgery done. The only time she ever missed doing my close-up. Do you know what I mean? When the camera turned around on...
Sure. You're doing the reverses, character. Right, and she's standing off camera.
She was always there. The only time she ever missed, she came to me and said, listen, I have to go have this thing done in the morning. I won't be here for you.
What a true professional.
Yes. She was professional. She and Loretta Young and... what's the other gal? She had Big Valley, the star of...
Barbara Stanwyck.
Barbara Stanwyck. They were all friends.
Right.
She would call Barbara. And when Jane had Jane Wyman Presents, and Jane told me this, she said, I would call Barbara, and I'd say, Barbara, is he any good? Is he all right? You're talking about who they had guesting on the previous, And if Barbara gave the okay, Jane used him.
That's great. That's great stuff. My experience with Jane would impress me so much because I was a fairly new producer, but I'd been around, the Universal system for a long time and seen how actors behaved. What really struck me about Jane Wyman, and this conversation isn't all about her, but she was a very impressive character. She stood all day. She rarely sat in her chair because she wanted things to keep moving. And there's this woman pushing whatever. She was certainly a senior citizen by that time, standing in 4-inch high heels under hot lights, doing close-ups, as you say, off-camera coverage, doing everything, and never once complaining about anything except when another actor didn't behave professionally.
That's when another person did not behave.
That's right.
She didn't hesitate.
It got ugly, right? Right.
Yeah, but it's one of the things that kept that show, and it kept us, I think personally that was the best team we had together on the show. When you were there, Greg, during that.
Well, we had a really nice writing staff. We had a great machine, and the thing that made it so easy for me was having guys like you, people like Jane, Billy, Susan, my goodness. People who came to actually do the work, you know.
Susan and I just did a play together.
I want to hear about that because
it was called The Delicate Balance by Edward Albee, and it's just been nominated by the Drama Critics or whatever association. And
wonderful, congratulations!
Well, he gave us awards, but it's been nominated for the best revival of a play. It was on the thing this morning David.
Perfect timing.
And you you only had the play up for about 7 weeks, 8 weeks?
Yeah. Yes, because we both had to leave. I had to leave. I had had other commitment, and but it was quite a special time.
And that's not the first time you've been on stage with Susan, is it?
Let's see. I don't think so. We were going to do...
You did Love Letters with her in West Virginia.
Yeah, I did Love Letters in West Virginia. Exactly.
That must have been fun.
Yeah, her mother came, too. It was very special. Yeah, and it was just lovely of her to do that for me. It was basically it was a fundraiser for this theater there. And so we did that. Yeah.
Before I get into I want to talk a little bit about your writing career because you're absolutely prolific. What was your impression of Soldier of Fortune?
Soldier of Fortune I loved. And I think that somehow in the second season, I don't know, Bob, now that's a good... I still think today, a show like that, look at American Sniper.
Oh, exactly. No, I think the show was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And I don't know that the show couldn't work, today. But that's me. I thought that, Well,
I loved your character. I thought Xavier Trout was just, you brought there was so much intelligence behind that because, the rest of the cast was really purely action-oriented, but somebody had to be the thinking man.
You were great in that role, David.
I love that. So tell us about what inspires your writing career because not many actors have been publishing like you have.
I sitting in New York when we were living in New York, and I think, I don't know, it's my upbringing, being a workaholic, and writing would keep me, so I started back then when we were living in New York, but not doing anything with it. Wrote a few things, and I started writing, I just write prose poetry, that kind of thing. And then in the, 90s, I wrote a play, and I was performing it, and then my mother passed away, and the only way I could cope with that, I started writing, and before I knew it, I had written a book of poems, a whole telling her story. It was called My Mother's Autumn.
What a great tribute to your mother.
And that was my way of dealing with that. And then I was asked to put together, they wanted to do a Dark Shadows book, somebody said. And the guy I still work with today, lovely man, he does all these PBS fundraisers, if you see Motown.
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, he produces those. He writes and produces them too. So he said, let's do a book. And he had worked for Dan Curtis for a lot of years. So he called it In and Out of the Shadows. And it was a lot of pictures and some poems, and it was just that kind of book for the fans. And then I wrote a book about West Virginia called A Better Place. It was about West Virginia, growing up there, and it was a social commentary on things from my point of view. And then I wrote a book about Lincoln, because being in Illinois when I was in school there, I wrote a book called Better Angels about Lincoln, and and this fellow who cares for him at the Lincoln Memorial. So I wrote that, and actually Ford's Theater has that. They have a stack of books in there. When you go in the building, it's a piece of sculpture, and all the books are metal.
That must be quite a thrill for you.
Yeah, that was quite a thrill. And then I wrote a few other books, and I have one coming out that I'm sort of, excited about. It's the publisher is, in fact, I just emailed her this morning, and it's called Promises of Love, and it will be out in April.
Wonderful.
There are a couple of others. And
you sound like you're busier than ever.
Well, yeah.
That's why we don't see much of you on the golf course, I guess, right?
No, it keeps me off the golf. Yeah, well, that and bad play would keep me off the golf course.
Now, David, with all the things that you have done, and you are so very talented, and I'm sincere about that. Have you ever directed?
I was offered to do, remember Falcon Crest? They'd say, David, you got to direct one.
Right.
Yeah,
well, everybody on the show wanted to direct something.
Yeah, but the thing of it is, it takes away from a real director, every job you take, so I never got into that. So
How
I didn't
thoughtful
do that.
of you.
Yeah, that's pretty
I
generous.
have directed, when I was a kid, I directed some theater. I directed a couple of plays. I directed Albie's Zoo Story.
Now speaking about directing, one of your children, or adult children, is in the business, correct?
Yeah, well, he's a gamer now. They have a company, not him. Well, he's high up in this company, and we'll see what happens to the company. It's, a couple of years, and they have like 40 employees. In fact, he goes to London tomorrow. I have to call him tonight. He speaks all over the world, Suzanne. He's he's speaking in London again, and then he goes to Amsterdam and speaks there. And then in June he goes to Russia.
Wow, sounds like an exciting life.
Well, not for his wife.
Well, sure.
Children, but he's a gamer. The company has a platform that they bring games onto, and then, so that's what he does. And I think, like a lot of these, maybe they look to be taken over at some point. I don't know.
Of course.
Anyway, I don't really understand what it is, but he loves the work, and he's
well, that's wonderful, because not everyone loves what they do, and it seems that people are happier if they're doing what they love. So, David,
and he comes with me to direct. We'll record things. We record a lot of radio shows by this company in London. They're audio discs, and he's done some with me, and gone to New York a couple of times with me to do things. So.
Sure, David. Looking back at your huge body of work that you have and are still doing, if you had to do everything all over again, would you do anything differently in terms of your career?
In terms of my career, my career has always been out of my hands to a certain extent, to a large extent. I might have, maybe there are a couple of films business-wise I should have done, looking back at them.
Sure.
There were, but on the whole, no. What happens is, it's hard to change. When they see me, they want to put a suit on me. I still get excited about the process. I still get excited about material, about a new idea, or hey, let's do this. Well,
David, the problem is you look so good in a suit.
No, but I want to do other, and so I'm going to do eventually here a couple of independent things that if they get off the ground. One's being written now, and another one's in the, what do you call it, early process.
So, David, principally, you are known for acting, and you have had for our generation, certainly one of the most varied and consistent careers, which is unique. For those who think back now when you were in West Virginia, if you were talking to the young David Selby, what advice would you give him? A young man who wants to become an actor, wants to be on New York stage, wants a Hollywood career. What do you tell a person like that?
I don't know, Bob. I'd say I'm very. I say follow your dream and persistence, and you have to have. There has to be a need. There has to be something driving you inside. If you need to do it, do it. If you don't feel that kind of whatever that need, that may be a sign that you want to do something else, or you're into something else. A lot of people I've come across, or a lot of young people, and their first instinct, because it's the most visible, is acting. And it takes a while to discover inside, wait a minute, there are a lot of other jobs. There are a lot of other disciplines that I can address. I can be a writer. I can be a director. I can be a set designer. So there are many facets. And what's happened over the years as the technology rules us now and all of this, there are many areas in technology. My son never realized, oh my goodness, gaming? I can make a living doing this. And, they spend more money on games than they do making films.
I know.
So it's just like everything else. It takes time for things for all of us to mature, to find out who we are as people. And it's like, if you approach it's I don't know. I think back and I think, oh my goodness, a few years, not that long ago, I'd look back there and I'd say, oh my goodness, what was I doing? But a lot of it was done out of innocence, out of ignorance. If you knew what was ahead of you, you might not, approach it. But I think people are very committed. They're driven. They find something inside, and that gathers them. And if they can hold on to whatever that core is that keeps them, keeps them on the road to what they want to do, and don't get detoured. If you really want to do this, and you don't have to go to New York today. You don't have to come to Los Angeles. You can stay in a lot of places. I think that's one of the wonderful things that technology has done for us. I get things from all over the country. People will, they're writing, they're directing.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, and I think television series, Bob, I know we still have this, but the way those are done now, digitally, how that could be. We could do, why can't we do? We could do a digital run of Falcon. Or
sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or any other idea that, you may have. So I do tell them, lightning isn't going to strike if you're in some remote rural area today. You do have to get yourself but technology makes the world, makes it a little smaller, so you can live in West Virginia and still be committed. I know a couple of wonderful production people that are so busy, and they live in my hometown.
Really?
Isn't that great?
I work with them. Yeah.
Isn't that great? So, David, as we wrap this up, I'm going to ask you the toughest question of all. If you could describe.
Oh, this is a Barbara Walters question.
This is my Barbara Walters question.
Oh, your Barbara Walters question.
Yeah. If you could describe yourself in one word, what is that word?
heartfelt but unfocused.
Okay. Heartfelt but unfocused.
I like that.
A renaissance man.
I tend to, as Chip says, will you focus? Focus. And it's true. I'm better off doing one thing at a time. But then I have to take a couple of hours off and take care of some other things. But basically, I'm better off when I come into the computer and sit there and concentrate for 2.5 hours on what I'm trying to write.
You know, another commendable thing, you and Chip have been married for a very long time in an industry where it's particularly difficult.
Yes, and I'm not saying it's been easy, especially on her. And I am always grateful. It's funny, the older you get, you're so grateful that she hung in there.
Boy, I can vouch for that. I've got one, too.
You got one, too. I remember, Suzanne, do you remember your connection to UCLA?
Oh, my.
And the volleyball team, right?
That's right. That was a long time ago, huh?
Yeah,
a long time ago.
That's when
now, was that your sister? I mean, was there somebody?
My cousin was married to the head volleyball coach.
That's right.
Of the female team.
The girls' team, yeah.
Right. I just remember that because somehow it came up in a conversation, maybe not with us at first, but with somebody there, and I said, wait a minute. I know.
Someone, yeah, and he had just retired. He'd been there for a very long time.
Yeah.
Very long time.
Well, listen, David, this has been terrific, and you've been extraordinarily generous with your time. All I can suggest is that anybody that wants to have a show business career to examine the life of David Selby, because you have done it. You have done it the right way.
Oh, thank you, Bob. But as a friend of mine, and Jason was a friend, Jason Robards. He had a saying. He said, "What's cut won't flop."
Excellent. Well, listen, the next time you guys are even thinking about coming over the hill
or passing through
or down the 101.
All right, Bob. I can't wait. Okay,
right.
Please
thank you,
send regards to Chip, please.
Okay, dear.
Okay. Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I have to say, David sounds exactly like he did 20 years ago, doesn't he?
It sounds like we haven't missed a day with David.
What an impressive resume he had.
And a great guy. Hey, before we leave, don't forget, our book is still available online at wherehollywoodhides.com, as well as at Chaucer's Books here locally in Santa Barbara. And you can always find it on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com.
Or at our website, Where Hollywood Hides.
Right. Free shipping there.
That's right. That's the more inexpensive way to go.
Exactly. So until next time.
This is Suzanne.
And this is Bob McCullough.
We'll see you at the movies. And today's music is provided by Chance McCullough. You can find more of his original soundtracks at chancemccullough.com.
And if you enjoyed today's podcast, please take a minute and give us a 5-star rating and a quick comment or review at iTunes/Where Hollywood Hides. Those reviews really do help get the word out. And drop by our Facebook page at facebook.com/Where Hollywood Hides and hit that like button.
They come from Chilicotes and Paducas with their bazookas to get their names up in lights.
All armed with photos from local rotos, with their hair in ribbons and legs in tights. Hooray for Hollywood! You have no way of knowing who'll make good.
Maybe you'll be another Papa Dion, your name and Neon. If you get lucky, you could. Yes, buddy, you'll arrive if you can top his 5. Hooray for Hollywood! Hooray for Hollywood!
Hollywood! They hire cowboys and then hang their chaps up and doll their maps up and give them all that